Hey guys, I just wanted to do a video of a new wrestling book that I'm currently reading, or I'm actually almost done with. It's Nitro by Guy Evans. I don't know if you listen to Eric Bischoff's podcast, 83 Weeks. He pretty much always refers to this book, so I was definitely curious. Now I do have a previous WCW book. This is called Death of WCW. This is by R.D. Reynolds and Brian Alvarez. Brian Alvarez is from the Wrestling Observer. I really enjoyed this book. I really loved it. It talks about pretty much the whole like history of WCW from when the NWA to like when Ted Turner bought it and they reformed it to WCW, all the way through to the end. And I guess you can see on the cover there who they kind of point fingers at of the reason why the company was went out of business. Vince Russo, Paul Nash, Eric Bischoff, and Hulk Hogan. We all know that that's pretty much not true. It was Jamie Kellner, the person that took over Turner, or TNT or the TV, and he decided to cancel WCW. But this is definitely a really interesting book. I really enjoy it. I think they actually did like an updated version of this that came out a couple years ago. But this is really good. Now, this Nitro book it's a big book. It's about 500 pages. I have a few pages left of it. What's cool about this book is the author like interviews different people that have worked for either WCW or Turner, and so he gets a whole like framework of like of the history of WCW through different employees. And so you mean we could be talking to like the guy that's in charge of the event management or somebody that works in the TV production. So you get all these like these their experiences working with WCW. So which is cool. So the book really starts off with the creation of Nitro, and just explains through all the year Nitro was on for 6 years, 95 to 2001. So you can pretty much go over like the glory years when 96, 97, 98 when they were pretty much beating Raw in the ratings, and then talk about the downfall of it. I just finished the chapters where they brought in Vince Russo. That was back in like the fall of 1999. Because the ratings were bad. They thought that Vince Russo would be the one that would change the company around. And that didn't work. And I just got to the part right now where Eric Bischoff was trying to buy the company, and the deal kind of falls apart because Turner decides to, or Jamie Kellner, at the time, he was the head of the TV department, I guess, and they decided to cancel Nitro or WCW programming because they were trying to like at the time they were trying to revamp or rebrand the TNT network, make it like the drama network, and TBS would be comedy. And I think that lasted for a couple of years, But so again, if no TV deal, that kind of killed. That kind of like and then WWE was able to come in and buy the company and buy the library. What was so it made me really think, because when I was reading this book, I was like, man, it's been 20 years since WCW went out of business. It was like 2001, and I always say I think that there was a part of the wrestling business that died when WCW went out of business. And I feel like even like if you look at WWE since then, since like 2001 to like now, they've been on a slow like decline. They're not, we're far past the boom era of wrestling. The late '90s when wrestling was really hot. When I'm talking about wrestling being hot is when wrestling was going through all different like entertainment fields. An example would be like, wrestlers were appearing on different shows, like game shows, and they're guest starring on like TV shows. One of the other things, like, back in the day when TV Guide The magazine used to be like really big. Before now and back in the day, like now you just hit the Guide channel and you get your, find out what's on TV. But back then, like, the TV Guide was like a really popular like magazine, and I remember like wrestlers being on the cover, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think Mankind, The Rock, even WCW with like Hulk Hogan and I think Goldberg might have been on the cover too. And why is that like so important? Well, where do you usually see the TV Guide? In like the grocery store, right by the cash register. So people are seeing like these wrestlers, or and that was when wrestling was really hot. And unfortunately, again, I don't think we'll ever experience that period ever again, unfortunately. But there was some good times, and I really, I do miss WCW, and I'm surprised that WWE never really did a WCW reunion show like they did with like ECW, like One Night Stand and stuff like that. Especially throughout the years, they did have a lot of WCW talent like Booker T, and eventually Sting. They could have definitely done a WCW reunion show. Maybe it was maybe a fear of it being really popular, and I guess you don't want to promote your competition that was that you were feuding with for so many years. But I always like saying like I'm always wondered why WWE never took over some of the pay-per-view names that WCW had. I mean, WWE had some really corny or really bad pay-per-view names. I comes to mind is Great Balls of Fire, and then even last month with Fastlane, I don't know. I mean, I thought WCW had so much better pay-per-view names like Super Brawl, Spring Stampede, Slamboree, Halloween Havoc. I know recently, WWE has started using some of the WCW names. I mean, a couple years ago they brought back War Games. That's an NXT event. Last October, they did Halloween Havoc at NXT. But again, I always want, I think that Halloween Havoc should be a its own pay-per-view. And then Starrcade, I mean, I think Starrcade should be a pay-per-view. I know they had that as a live event, like special on the network a couple years ago. And then they did have the Great American Bash back, many years ago that they did that. And then they stopped doing that. But I wish that they would, maybe NXT will in the next couple, years. Maybe they will start bringing back some of these old WCW names. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely recommend this book. Again, they talk about everything that's going on, whatever all the stuff that happened in WCW. They talk about one of the things I always like reading about is the Hogan Sting match from Starrcade '97. How the ending of that match was so confusing. The build-up was so good, but the match sucked. And then they talk about pretty much like, when Goldberg, when Nash beats Goldberg at Starrcade '98 and ends the streak. Saying that was pretty much the beginning of the end for WCW. I also enjoyed, just them talking about like selling the company, to like, back, like in 2001 with like, Eric Bischoff, working on, with investors and trying to buy the company. And I look at, even like, if you listen to Eric Bischoff's the last episode of 83 Weeks, it's called Big Bang. That was like the pay-per-view that they were going to call when WCW relaunched. I think it was going to be May of 2001, but of course, it never happened. So in the podcast, Bischoff and Conrad, they talk about, that pay-per-view, what the pay-per-view would be like and all that. And it would be interesting to see what the company would have been like. I know that they were thinking about having like a show in Vegas and doing shooting Nitro there. So I mean, all these things, what ifs in the wrestling business. What would have happened, if WCW was still around and Bischoff was able to buy the company. I mean, would we still have Nitro? Would we still have, like companies like Ring of Honor and Impact Wrestling or TNA at the time? Would they have been a company? That's things, I mean, you think about like AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, they would probably be wrestling for WCW. Um, but it'd be really interesting and to look back but definitely highly recommend this book if you if you're interested in WCW. It's a long book, but it's very detailed and it's really good.